from Steve, and then let me know how that is, please.
You bet, yeah.
All right, yeah.
Okay.
We'll have a,
I'll let you know
we'll have
after
a
we
lobby
get.
meeting here pretty soon.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure, and then I just like to keep it.
Candace, how are you?
How are you?
Good. Sorry, you look like you're.
And it's your call, right? Even if I said, no, you have to, you really should, it's your call. Nobody forces you. Yeah, more objective, it's just that perception, whatever you're comfortable with the perception, right? So, yeah, yeah, no, fair enough. And probably, technically, I think in the NJ,
Yeah, I think that's.
Good morning, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order this morning at 9:03 a.m. Thank you for joining us. In our agenda package, we move down to the adoption of our agenda. Additions, deletions. I have two proposed additions, two closed session items. J1, economic development opportunity, FOIP section 16, disclosure harmful to business interests of a third party. And a second item, J2, personnel matter, FOIP 19, confidential evaluations. Are there any other additions or deletions of the agenda? Mark?
I'd move the adoption of the agenda for today's meeting.
As amended?
As amended.
Awesome.
Sorry.
Mark has moved for the adoption of the agenda for today's meeting as amended. Any discussion? If not, call question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Moving down in our agenda, item C, adoption of minutes. You have the minutes of the April 20th, 2023 meeting before you. Are there any errors, omissions, or any issues arising from the minutes? John?
I'd like to move adoption of the minutes as presented.
Thank you, John. John has moved to adopt the minutes of the April 20th, 23 council meeting as presented. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And now, if it's all right with everyone, we're going to move things around a little bit. We'll go right into a closed session right out of the gate to get something out of the way. So we'll deal with item J2 right off the start. Should I have a motion to enter a closed session? Lauren? Lauren has moved to enter a closed session. Any discussion? Call a question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. We'll resume our public meeting this morning at 9:23 a.m. Sorry, Candace, you were good, eh? We'll resume at 9:23, and I'm just going to step out, and I will turn over to John, Deputy Reeve Kurbis.
Okay, fair enough.
Hey, no pressure,
None taken. All right, we'd like to move on to our next item on our agenda, which is D1, Subdivision Application 2022-0-187, Neighbors. Nieboers. My apologies. Nieboers? Boss, can you hand me my pad and pen? No, pad. Writing pad. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this first subdivision is for subdivision application 2022-0-187. On behalf of the Nieboers, they are looking to reconfigure an existing acreage that they have. They want to reconfigure it, the existing 6-acre country residential title, and realigning it so that it's configured more to the north. This is to allow for them to develop some lands to the south for their own needs, and then I think they wish to dispose of the acreage to another party. And with that, and it is just to the south and west of the town of Nieboer. Steve, you'll take the rest of the comments and the recommendation.
Good morning, everyone. This application in front of you, this first one, is just a land reconfiguration. They're basically picking up and moving to the north the parcel. It's going to be the exact same size from what they began with, so it's a 6-acre parcel, and in the end they'll conclude with a 6-acre parcel, so the parcel size is not changing. Part of the application is to extend the parcel to a little bit to the east of where their existing yard line runs, because their septic field system is currently over the property line onto the ag title. So to be in compliance with the 2015 sewer standards that no longer allows the septic lines to be off the property, it'll capture that septic system and put it within the yard title that's associated with the dwelling. And then the other part of the proposal is to add the acreage land on the north side rather than the south. So the south portion will go back to the ag title, and then the parcel will be extended to the north. Primarily, I guess, for their own family personal reasons and to accommodate some future building sites on the properties is why they're undertaking this. This parcel, it does front onto the old Highway 23 road, Range Road 23-4, so they have their access from the west side there. With the reconfiguration, it'll rectify the encroachment of the septic field problem. There will be no other building or encroachments or issues. The buildings on there will meet the setbacks with the adjustment there. During the referral of this application, it is within the IDP boundary area with the town of Hohlbein. A reconfiguration such as this is allowed within the policies of the IDP. Town of Hohlbein didn't provide comments back on it, so just assume that they have no objections, but they haven't provided any comment as of today. And as well, with the reconfiguration, there wasn't any requirements for any of the utility agencies for any utility easements or anything of that nature. This yard actually is quite old. It was first established in 1910, the existing one that was there. So it's from an old plan here. But what they're doing is the exact same size of what they have. So as a reconfiguration of policy, not creating another title, and based on they're not enlarging or needing a waiver of that, I have recommended approval to you with 3 conditions. And that would be the taxes are paid up to date, development agreements entered if required, and the third just deals with the plan of survey, that it's done in a manner acceptable to us and land titles, that it is the land's being swapped there is consolidated together and such so that there is no standalone title. So it'll be 2 they're starting with, 2 in the end. It's just pushing the acreage up and reconfiguring that a little bit. So with that, I guess I should also mention it is within the referral distance of urban transportation, but it's far enough off, doesn't take access off the highway, that they have no objections and granted approval of that. So with those 3 conditions, I recommend the approval resolution to you.
Thank you. Any questions? Lord?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 3 questions, actually. The bigger ponds, is that the Noble for water?
Yeah.
That's the
storage
water
facilities?
reservoir.
So, and the septic line is going to increase the distance of the lot to the east?
Correct.
And how much room does that leave then in that little space now that you're adding on to the north part between that and the property line for the ponds? Because they're very much in there, or is that just gonna be a pain, like it's hard to tell on the map?
Yeah, it's, I believe it was 70-something meters, if I remember right.
Yeah, it's about 75-ish
Yeah.
meters, so that's an adequate amount of
Oh.
area to accommodate any, driveway if they need it for the egg land or any equipment, I would think could fit in that area too.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe this is in our land use policy already, but that acreage will not be eligible for a resplit at some point down the road?
They
Yeah.
could come back and resplit this title because it is over 4 acres in size.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the policy is a resplit can be looked at if it's less than 20 acres and above the 4 acres, because you have to have at least a 2-acre minimum.
Okay. Do we have any legal authority to limit that?
No, every subdivision application comes from you, is looked at the time it's submitted and the merits of it and what your policies are on subdivision. So the application in front of you you're dealing with now, and then any future, whether they come back or not, would be looked at that time of what the policies are and if it enables that and if it meets those policies or not. So under the planning law, you can only deal with the application that's in front of you and what the rules are on the subdivision.
Just through the chair to Councillor Van Essen, council does have the option at this time, if you wish to change, if you say you don't want to have, because they're taking up agricultural land on the north, you could change the parcel size. That is something that would be council's prerogative as the subdivision authority.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have an appetite to change the size. It's more that dealing with the acreages. It's really too bad Nobleford didn't respond as with their expansions and that I think municipal need should overrule an acreage want on lagoons, and so yeah, that's too bad. But if they have it, then we can't rule on that. So I'd like to put a motion forward to accept subdivision application number 2022-0187.
Thank you, Eric. Eric has moved that subdivision application number 2022-0-187 be approved. I'm assuming subject to the conditions that outlined in the draft resolution. Any more discussion? Ross?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How far has Nobleford annexed? Have they annexed across the railroad, that side, or not at all?
No, they just have, here, I'll pull up the map, Mr. Chairman, for Councillor Vanderveen. They have, actually, they did a bit of a trade back in 2010?
Something
I
like
think
that, yeah,
2010. When they annexed the areas to the west, or to the east, they actually, some land went back into the county on the other side of the tracks. So their growth objectives are more going to the east and to the north, northeast, versus crossing the tracks. It's just, obviously, if you have a town on two sides of the tracks, it's a little bit more complicated. So they haven't, as far as in discussions with them on the IDP that we have with them now and future development, that's their objectives right now, to kind of keep with that trajectory to the east and the northeast.
Any further discussion? I call the question. Those in favor? That is passed. Next on the agenda is subdivision application 2023-0-023 Green Haven Tree Farm.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this next application is a reconfiguration of and subdivision of the Green Haven greenhouse. So the applicant wishes to readjust their lot on the south end of their parcel with regards to the existing residence that they have. They want to ensure that all of the improvements that are with the greenhouse are tied to the greenhouse, and any improvements with the house are staying with the house. So they've put that forward, that application to amend those boundaries. And then their objective is to subdivide the greenhouse and the associated dugout to the north that services the greenhouse, as they are looking to move forward into a different phase of their lives, and they wish to divest themselves of the greenhouse at some point in time. So this would accomplish that. It does meet our subdivision policies for subdividing out a horticultural business or parcel out of a parcel that is less than 20 acres in size. And with that, I will put the remainder of the comments and the recommendation to Steve.
Hey, Mr. Chair and Council, this application, there's kind of two parts to it going on, as the landowners own two adjacent parcels. So the first component is dealing with the residential property at the very south end. They currently have a 1.3 acre title that was done many years back when you had a 1 acre minimum parcel size. Your minimum parcel size now is at 2 acres. So the first part of the application involves realigning the property line of the residence in the very southwest corner there, neck by the road, with the nursery business. Part of it's to account for a greenhouse building there that's kind of close between them, and to keep that with the nursery business and not for the resident part, and then extending the residence parcel's boundary all the way to the east, so it touches the east boundary. So their parcel basically would be all along the south perimeter there. And that would increase their size from 1.3 acres to the 2 acres and meet your minimum land use bylaw size for a country residence on a private septic system. The second component is to reduce the size of the commercial greenhouse portion by subdividing out a 6.37 acre vacant parcel on the north end. This is an area that's not required for part of the greenhouse operations. There's an existing dugout you can see on the very northwest corner, which will remain as part of the greenhouse title. And there's a septic field associated with the greenhouse in the very southwest corner of the proposed new parcel, which will be decommissioned and relocated for the business. So it will be properly sited on their parcel. There's also, as you can see there, kind of next to the road in the photo, there's a manufactured home kind of sitting next to the road there. That's proposed to be removed from the property. And the dwelling septic field would also be decommissioned and removed as well. And that little portion would be still associated with the greenhouse. So in the end, the access to the greenhouse lot will remain unchanged from the Western Municipal Road, which is Road 21-2. While access to the proposed 6.37 acre lot will come from the North Service Road adjacent to Highway 3. Similar to what the church takes off there. There's a service road that runs along the highway there. So that second component, a large part of it is just to reduce the size of the greenhouse operation. Just their own personal reasons. They have a long-term employee who's looking to take over the greenhouse from them. And as well, as you can imagine, the price of land closer to Lethbridge is a lot more than if you go further out. This is an area where, with the church going on there and the greenhouse, and then there's some acreages along the road to the south. This is within the IDP area with the city of Lethbridge, so the application was referred to them. This type of application can be considered under the IDP with the city of Lethbridge. The comments that came back from the city is that they have no objection to this proposal for the greenhouse. But in accordance with the IDP, any additional subdivision will require an area structure plan to be prepared and approved for the area. So on this particular application, because it does meet the policies for boundaries, reconfigurations, and also for the subdivision of a commercial operation there for the greenhouse. I recommended approval to you, and it's also in accordance with the IDP as mentioned. As part of that application, the payment of municipal reserve would be applicable on this application. There currently is a deferred reserve caveat on title, which basically said last time when the parcel was created, the county didn't take their municipal reserve. They would defer it to the future, which is now. We're dealing with this application. So with that, the municipal reserve value from your assessor came in at $40,000 per acre. So the recommendation is that, I guess, two things. One is that when the country residential part was created, they did pay on that. So now that they're going from 1.3 to the larger, there's a difference we have to account for, so that would be provided. And then as well that they would pay on the 7.9 acres at the $40,000 per acre. So that's the greenhouse portion, because it has the buildings and everything on there. That parcel would not likely to be re-subdivided and remain as is. And then that a deferred reserve caveat to just be placed on the new 6.37 acre title, which is the vacant piece there. The reason for that is that you do have the 2 acre minimum parcel size, and if an area structure plan was prepared for this area, it's anticipated that it likely maybe wouldn't stay as a 6, but it could be, 2-3 acres, depending how an area structure is planned done. You might even get 3 lots in there, depending how they prepare that plan and how it has road access. But that would be outlined in any future area structure plan, though. So the recommendation is that on that portion, we would place the deferred reserve caveat and take it in the future. So the recommendation is to approve based on the policies with the payment of municipal reserve as outlined in the resolution. And then the conditions would be that the taxes are paid up to date, a development agreement entered into with the county, the plan and survey based with those consolidations done. The fourth condition would be that the septic field associated with the greenhouse in the very southwest corner of the proposed new 6.37 acre parcel be decommissioned and relocated for the business with confirmation provided to the satisfaction of the subdivision authority. And then the fifth would be that the septic field associated with the manufactured home dwelling be decommissioned with confirmation provided to the satisfaction of the subdivision authority also as well. So those 5 conditions and the municipal reserve provisions.
Thank you. Any questions? Or,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the the dugout and the mobile home land go to the greenhouse, right?
That's correct, yeah.
And the bigger parcel, the 6 acre or almost 7 acre one, it has legal access from the service road going to the church?
Yes, yeah, the service road to the north, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
any more questions? Klaus?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'll move that subdivision application 2023-0-023 be approved, subject to the conditions outlined in the draft resolution.
Thank you, Klaus. Klaus has moved that subdivision application 2023-0-023 be approved subject to conditions that outlined in the draft resolution. Any further discussion? I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That is carried. Okay, we are on to D3, subdivision application 2023-0-025 Variety Farms, Inc.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this third subdivision application is also a reconfiguration of titles. They are looking to reduce the size of the parcel from 4.45 acres to 3 acres in size and for the same use as country residential. This particular application is located to the north of the town of Nobleford. And with that, Steve, I'll pass it on to you for the comments and the recommendation.
Mr. Chair, this application, again, is reconfiguration. In this case, they're reducing the parcel size of the acreage, reducing it from the current 3 acres down, or sorry, 4.45 acres down to the 3 acres in size. Largely what it's doing is that there is some grain bins and such there, you can see in the photo, and a building that'll be removed, and they'll go with the agricultural portion, and then the dwelling and the yard improvements there, and the trees will stay with the yard. The access will remain unchanged from the west road, and the septic system that's associated with the dwelling is going to remain within the confines of the yard dwelling once subdivided. There'll be no encroachment issues or anything like that. Largely, I think the reason for this proposal is to facilitate a land sale between the two, and they're keeping the bins there with and the ag building with the ag land on that. So the proposed parcel size at 3 acres exceeds your 2 acre minimum parcel size. And on this circulation, there was no special concerns applicable. The one utility company, Fortis, did request easement out of the utility companies. So with a reconfiguration of titles, with no additional title, they were just changing that north property line and putting the grain bins back with the ag parcel. It meets your policies for a country residential parcel at the 3 acre size. In an approval, the conditions would be the standard. The taxes are paid up to date, development agreement entered to if required. The third would be the important plan of survey with the consolidation be done, so there is no standalone titles created. And then the fourth condition would be just the easement that Fortis Alberta had requested as part of this land swap. So.
Perfect, thank you. Any questions? Klaus?
The land around there, is that irrigated land?
It appears to be dry land in that particular location.
Any other questions, concerns? How would you like to proceed? Klaus?
Then I'll move that subdivision 2023-0-025 be approved, subject to the conditions as outlined in the draft resolution.
Thank you. So Klaus has moved subdivision application number 2023-0-025 be approved subject to conditions as outlined in the draft resolution. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? That is carried. And I will now turn this back over to our Reeve, who is back from his meeting.
Which one was that, John? Sorry.
We are now at D4.
Thank you. And our agenda is number 4, subdivision application number 2023-0-037. Hillary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this application is to subdivide out a 4.24 acre title out of a area that is 98 acres in size. This falls under our subdivision of a cutoff parcel. As you can tell, there's a canal that goes, bisects the original quarter section that's on the north side of this parcel. The applicant is requesting that they be able to subdivide off this parcel. This is where Broke Pork operates out of. This is their commercial side of their business where they do their processing. They currently do have a development permit, just for council's knowledge, in terms of having a kind of a small business in a rural area. And so this is just, I guess, to sever off and kind of separate it from their existing agricultural land and their residence. This is, the parcel is located to the northwest of Park Lake off of, and about a mile south of Highway 519. And with that, I'll pass it off to Steve for the comments and the recommendation.
Mr. Chair, this application, as described, is to subdivide the rural commercial aspect for the existing specialty food pork business in the very northeast corner adjacent to the irrigation canal. The owners desire to separate the business portion onto a separate title from the agricultural land and their residence on the agricultural portion. Possibly to accommodate a future expansion of the commercial business. Currently, that commercial business area contains a single commercial building used for the retail component associated with custom pork products. On the proposal, the parcel's proposed south boundary is being squared straight west to the canal boundary and will include the on-site private septic system, which extends out and is situated to west of the current commercial building. The use is served by private cistern system for water. There's an existing approach in place to the commercial portion and that building from the East Municipal Road allowance, so nothing will change in regards to access. As Hillary explained there, the parent quarter section is split by the main L&D canal and the drain right away, and this is occurring from the south side of the quarter section that was severed. This falls within your subdivision policies that they're able to be eligible to subdivide the commercial business off. By doing this, it will preclude the ability of them, if they ever wanted to subdivide their yard out in the future there, that's in the middle. They are aware of that, and they realize that would be a difficult subdivision just due to the location, how it's set back, and the size of it, but it's also more important or paramount for them to have the subdivision for the commercial business than it is for the farm residence, which is associated with the farmland. So they are knowledgeable of the policies and how that would affect them. So on this application, it does meet your isolated rural commercial subdivision policies that allow for such a subdivision. The proposed parcel size at 4.24 acres meets your policies as well. It does not exceed the maximum 10-acre parcel size. So with that, during the circulation, there was no objections or concerns received from anybody. The ACO gas does require an easement So based on your policies and the circulation, I have recommended approval to you. That would be on the basis of taxes and paid up to date, a development agreement entered into, the final surveyed plan being submitted, and then that the ATCO easement as requested be provided as well.
Thank you very much, Steve. Open up to council. Any questions? Go ahead, Klaus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on this, because it sounds like they're going to have an expansion in their processing facilities there, do they have co-op potable water for that, or what is the score for that?
I'm not particularly aware of their water situation for this particular business. They haven't talked to us about the expansion part yet, which will have some development implications in terms of how it can meet that size for the kind of small scale business in a rural area. But obviously we'll cross that bridge once we get there. But I don't know if they have a stub in from the water co-op for this. I would almost think so, just because if the processing, they would have to have potable water.
Lauren?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So question on the zoning, is the entire parcel zoned for commercial use then?
No, this parcel is still zoned under the rural agricultural district. The commercial business is allowed as a small-scale specialty business under our rural agricultural district.
So if it's changing to a subdivision, does it need to be rezoned then?
If they were to wish to expand, they probably would have to look at that, yes. At this point in time, no, they do not, because it still falls within our allowable subdivision policies for the number of parcels for a cutoff.
And then you sort of answered my question, the other question, because Claus asked it, but on the wastewater side of that question, would 4.2 acres be satisfactory for an expansion of a business?
Right now, we do have the 2-acre minimum parcel size for the on-site septic, so they do have a septic field there currently. Once again, through the development process, we would be looking at things like the zoning. We would look at their septic, make sure they have enough area. 4 acres is a reasonable parcel size to accommodate a small business on the property at this point in time.
Thank you.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a little bit more clarification is kind of what I'm looking for on the zoning aspect of it. If the subdivision gets approved and this parcel then is divided out of the parcel, that the zoning on that will remain the same as it is now? It wouldn't be rezoned as commercial?
That's correct. So because the use is contained within the rural agricultural district and the subdivision itself meets the subdivision policies, no need to rezone. But once we look at if they're proposing something in the future, then we would look at the intensity, determine, is there any other zoning considerations to, if the zoning needs to change to account for an intensification of use, or if they can fit within the parameters of the specialty manufacturing as it stands today.
And Mr. Chair, just further through that, to Councillor Carrera's question, just the subdivision policies allow for what we call a rural isolated commercial subdivision in the rural agricultural zoning. So you're allowed one of those, similar to just like a farmstead or acreage parcel. So the zoning currently does not have to change for what they're doing, and for the subdivision purposes, it meets the bylaw and the policies. So you have a rural industrial subdivision policy, you have a rural public institutional, a rural commercial, just like you do for a rural residence. So it falls within that policy. If something was to change with what they're doing on the land in the future or something like that, then that's a development issue, and then they might have to look at the county to change the zoning on that.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So then, could you explain the difference between this operation and the cheese one down the road a little ways? Like, because that's that had to be rezoned, no?
Yes, that's correct. Through the chair to Councillor Hickey. So with regards to other businesses, say like AgriPure or Crystal Springs Cheese and other kind of bigger manufacturers, the change came with their size. So once they were over 10,000 square feet, that's when that's the tipping point under the rural agriculture. You can have a specialty manufacturing or processing type business as long as it's contained to that 10,000 square feet. That's how the bylaw reads today. And so with Crystal Springs Cheese, they rezoned to direct control because their size expanded. They went beyond that because their operation obviously got bigger. Really nice success story in the county. So this facility, I don't recall how big their building is now. I'm guessing it's probably around 4,000, 5,000 square feet at this point in time. So they do have room to expand under the current rural agricultural district, if depending on how they want to do it. If they were to go above that threshold, then that's where that zoning would change. And it's more of the intensity of the use, any implications off-site. That's the threshold we've chosen in terms of that council's approved through the bylaw to say this is still servicing at an agricultural level, it's smaller scale, and then going to a bigger, say, more intense manufacturing where you have more clients, more deliveries, more trucking, that kind of thing, where you might have different considerations that we should be having a different process and consultation with adjacent landowners.
Thank you, Hillary. Any other questions? Seeing none, how would you like to proceed? Claus?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move that subdivision application 2023-0-037 be approved subject to the conditions outlined in the draft resolution.
Thank you, Claus. Claus has moved the recommendation that subdivision application 2023-0-037 be approved subject to the conditions as outlined in the draft resolution. Any discussion? Not, I'll call a question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That is carried. With that, we do have a 10 o'clock public hearing. So why don't we recess for maybe 5 minutes, and we will reconvene with our public hearing at 10:05. Thank you. We'll call the meeting back to order at 10:05. We do have a public hearing scheduled for 10 a.m. Sorry, we're running a few minutes behind. With that, we will recess the regular meeting. We are here today to hold the public hearing for Bylaw 23-008, amendment to Bylaw 18-012, being the Chinook Industrial Park Area Structure Plan, and Bylaw 23-009, Land Use Bylaw Amendment from Lethbridge Urban Fringe to Rural General Industrial and Business Light Industrial. I would ask for a motion to open the public hearing. Oh, everybody. Go ahead, Klaus.
I'll move that we go into public hearing.
Klaus's motion to open the public hearing. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. The public hearing is being held pursuant to the Municipal Government Act as amended. The public hearing is being live streamed via the county's YouTube page. With that, the public hearing for Bylaw 23-008 and Bylaw 23-009 is now officially open. I will now ask the Supervisor of Planning and Development to review the nature of the hearing and provide an overview of what is being proposed. With that, Hillary, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So today we're here to, for council to consider two bylaws, being Bylaw 23-008, being an amendment to the Chinook Industrial Area Structure Plan, and also Bylaw 23-009, which is to rezone the lands from Lethbridge Urban Fringe to Business Light Industrial and Rural General Industrial for future development. With regards to the application, first reading of these bylaws was held on April the 6th of this year, and the original Chinook Industrial Park Area Structure Plan was originally approved by County Council in November of 2018. The amendments proposed today better align with the current development aspirations of the developer in terms of how they want to service the lots and how they want to provide access to those industrial parcels upon subdivision and development. So the other aspects that it does look at it specifies in the amendments as the servicing of the sites for water and on-site wastewater treatment, as they no longer desire to connect it to the municipal wastewater services that we have done so in the subdivision below in Rave. Put my back on. To amend the road network within the plan area and update the traffic impact assessment, to update the stormwater management plan, to update the land use districts within the proposed area to better align with current trends in terms of development within the area, and update the phasing and implementation of the development for the plan area. The original Chinook Industrial Plan took into consideration about 200 acres, and so that's what the plan is looking at, but focusing more on the next phase of development to the north of where the Kirkham Holdings has their land. So the area they're looking at is to the north where most of the amendments are contained. The changes to the Kirkham side of things are somewhat minimal, just in terms of just rearranging the road network. In addition, with regards to Bylaw 23-009, the proposed redesignation would look at about a 66-acre area to the north of the existing development of Kirkham Holdings, and this would be partially, a small portion would be business light industrial, with the remainder being rural general industrial, which is the main industrial district within Lethbridge County. The application was circulated to all the county departments, the City of Lethbridge, and external agencies for review and comment. No concerns were expressed from TELUS, ATCO Gas, Alberta Transportation, the Oldman River Regional Services Commission, and Fortis. And comments came in from, we did receive some comments from the St. Mary's Irrigation District, and Steve Hardy at ORS did have a few just kind of technical things that needed to be amended that were addressed in the bylaw at the time of first reading. The City of Lethbridge did provide comments, and some amendments have been made to the area structure plan to reflect some of their comments and concerns. We did remove the reference to the City of Lethbridge engineering standards and only included the Lethbridge County engineering standards. We added text to the end of section 7, being the road section, regarding roads and intersection improvements. that were reflect earlier conversations with the city that happened in September of 2022 when we originally were discussing this development with the developer. Other items that they raised that will be handled at later stages of the development process include on-site parking and landscaping will be addressed at the development permitting stage. The development agreement at the time of subdivision will address the improvements that are required for each phase of the development, so improvements to the roads and intersections, any improvements that are required will be addressed at that time through that agreement in consultation with the city of Lethbridge. The developer and the county, in addition to all this, will work with the city during the detailed design stage, which is the subdivision stage essentially, to address any additional concerns with regards to the TIA, Traffic Impact Assessment. So with that, the Planning and Development Department also did a review of the applications and will provide the following comments. The proposed amendments to the plan conform to the policies of the county's municipal development plan, being Bylaw 22-001, as well as the Lethbridge County and City of Lethbridge Intermunicipal Development Plan. In addition, the lands proposed in the area structure plan have also been identified in the Lethbridge County Industrial Commercial Land Use Strategy, which was recently updated and approved by County Council in April of 2023. And this is a future growth area identified in that plan, as well as a growth area within the intermunicipal development plan with the City of Lethbridge. The bylaws were advertised in the April 11th and 18th editions of the Sunny South News, and we also mailed direct notices to the adjacent landowners. With that, and we did not receive any comments or concerns with regards to that particular notice that was sent out. The applicant, I will note, did do some detailed discussions with the adjacent landowners just to inform them of the proposed changes. Obviously, since there already was a plan in place for this to be industrial, there wasn't really any concerns, but they still did their due diligence to ensure that if there was some concerns from those adjacent landowners that they could address them at this time. But I don't believe that they had any, and they can speak to that in more detail if they choose to after I'm done. So that is my agenda report. You'll see, Mr. Chairman and Council, there are a number of attachments for this particular application. It is quite lengthy, just because there's a lot of technical reports that are associated with this type of development, which just shows that the applicant has done their due diligence in terms of meeting county requirements and any other requirements required for such a development within Lethbridge County. And with that, I will put it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Hillary. This is council's opportunity to receive input from the public. Those making presentations are asked to state their name and review their points. We ask that you refrain from asking questions to council. The intention of the public hearing is not to debate or defend the contents of the bylaw or the position which individual councillors may have on the bylaw. Questions asked of a councillor by a presenter may be ruled out of order. Presentations to council will start with the applicant who has made a submission, followed by any other persons wishing to comment on the proposal. Please keep your comments to the point. After each speaker, members of council will be permitted to ask questions of the presenter to clarify any details. No debating or questions from the floor will be allowed. With that, I would open up the floor to the applicant if they choose to speak.
Just speak into the mic, Christina.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Can I go ahead?
Good morning.
Go right ahead. Awesome. Good morning, Chair and members of Council. My name is Christina Lombardo, and I'm a planner with Stantec, representing the developer of the subject lands. I'll keep my presentation brief, but just wanted to start out by saying a big thank you to administration for all the work they've done on this application thus far. I'm here today to speak in support of this application for the Chinook Industrial Area Structure Plan and the associated land use amendment. I would like to reiterate the purpose of this application is to amend the existing area structure plan to further evaluate the lands using technical studies in coordination with the feedback from agencies, including county staff, to refine the high-level plan for this area. The existing area structure plan in this area is, it details only the two most southern parcels, as well as a portion of one storm pond. Since the original adoption of this ASP, the ownership of these lands have changed, and further detail is now needed to give direction for this plan area moving to the north. The ASP is also being fully reviewed and brought up to current planning and engineering standards, as well as assessing the plan against current market demands. As Hillary mentioned, all amendments proposed align with the overarching policy in the area, including the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan, the Intermunicipal Development Plan between the county and the city, and the Municipal Development Plan. This plan also aligns with the direction outlined in the approved industrial commercial land use strategy, represented within diagram 4 of the growth area, which notes that industrial growth should continue to occur in this area moving north of 9th Avenue. This plan, if approved today, lays the groundwork for that growth to occur. The land use is being requested predominantly as rural general industrial with an area of business light industrial along 43rd Street, which best utilizes the visible and accessible nature of this area. This has been done to allow for a light industrial type use at the intersection of 43rd Street and 14th Ave that will integrate with the style of development that's located to the west within the city's boundary and mirror the land use that is utilized within the existing ASP to the south of 9th Avenue. So I'm available for any questions if needed, as well as Michael Kelly with Summis, the developer, who would like to come up and say a few words as well.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you.
Good morning, Council. I'm Michael Kelly. I'm the managing partner for the development of the Chinook Business Park. First of all, I'd like to thank you for taking our application and hearing us today. A few acknowledgements to both Hillary and Devin. They really kept our feet to the fire on this one and ensure that we're lining up to the natural order of the various hierarchy of planning, which goes from the South Saskatchewan plan to the river plan, right down to the intermunicipal plan that we make sure that we're fully integrating back with the city to the west. Our journey through this was quite wide. We engaged quite a bit with the neighboring landowners. Particularly, I'd like to acknowledge Mr. George Kirkham. We spent a lot of time with him to understand his journey for the original ASP and what his vision was for the neighborhood and respect what he had already started in the development area. Next along our journey was the St. Mary's River irrigation system, so we didn't want to interfere how their efficiency of their activities and how the pond was to integrate as it was being upsized to accommodate the stormwater management. The two other aspects that we really focused in on was back with the city, both with the transportation department, with the general manager and the general manager of the water and wastewater. The fire suppression is a big issue in all development, and to have water available for that was very key for this development. And the city was gracious enough to be able to extend the water connection into the development. The other one was stormwater management. The stormwater management, as some of the other industrial parks that you have in your area, this is not a heavy food production area. This is a lot of lay-down yards and warehousing, so there's not a lot of a great need for wastewater management.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hillary. Wastewater management. I got a little off with that. The a couple of toilets and a coffee machine is what you'll see in most of these places, and we determined that having a septic tank in each development, each lot, would suffice for these developments. And there is also a burden back on the city system with capacity of wastewater management system. But the city were very good to work with. Again, your staff here were fantastic to work with. We rushed through, but it wasn't a rush that we're blind. It was a rush to do the right thing, and it's always about doing the right thing. But thank you very much for your time, and we're available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you. I would again open the floor up. Are there any others wishing to speak at this time? Once again, is there anyone wishing to speak to the proposed bylaws at this time? And I will ask a third time. Is there anyone wishing to speak to the proposed bylaws at this time? Seeing none, I would ask for a motion to close the public hearing. Lauren?
I make that
Thank you, Lauren. Lauren has moved to close the public hearing at 10:20 this morning. Is there any discussion? If not, call a question. Those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We can now resume our public meeting. I would open it up to council. Are there any questions to Hillary at this time? Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Hillary, there are only two entrances and exits to this particular block, 18th and 14th? There's none
That's
to the
correct.
north?
Yeah.
Okay.
They did look at having, through the chair to Councillor Hickey, they looked at having a connection directly onto Township Road 92 to the north. But in looking at it with Devon and with their transportation, we determined that it was too close really to the intersection to the city on 26th Avenue. And so we did keep those two entrances and exits just off of the main road. That'll facilitate kind of 2 ins and 2 outs into the neighborhood, which is always ideal. And as I mentioned, we'll be working with the city on those intersection improvements as the area develops in the future.
And 9th, the part that goes through Kirkham's, does dead ends in Kirkham's, right?
Yes, they had detailed discussions with Mr. Kirkham on that. Originally, in the original plan, there was a connection of those 44th and 45th Streets carrying on to the north. But just in terms of an opportunity to look at minimizing the amount of road network that the county would have to maintain in the future, and the particular uses that the developer is looking at, it was determined, and also Mr. Kirkham's future goals for his particular property, it was determined that this would satisfy all of those particular goals. So,
Is there any other questions from council? Go ahead, Mark.
So just to clarify, so off of 9th Avenue, there's no access to go 9th and then head north? That's blocked off then?
yeah, so we're somewhat delineating the newer business park that's being proposed through this development and some of the existing into rave to the south.
Go ahead, Klaus.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So with the access to it, 18th Avenue, 14th Avenue, it seems like there's access to everything that you can get at there. Is that going to be a very busy areas for this subdivision here?
The area, through the traffic impact assessment, which the Stantec has updated for this particular development. So, and even in the original one, it did determine horizons in terms of when there will be necessary intersection improvements, including lights. And so we actually accounted for those in the 2018 bylaw. And it's actually in our schedule of fees to account for subdivision, and developers will contribute to the intersection improvements, including lighting of those intersections as development occurs.
Any other questions? John?
Just one small point of order. When we're looking at if we're contemplating reading of these bylaws, we've got it set up right now as the second reading for both bylaws and then third reading for both bylaws. Is that how administration would like it to be set out? No.
Yes, I can speak to that, Mr. Chairman. So yes, with regards to this particular application and our recommendation, we do recommend that second and third reading occur for both of the area structure plan and the rezoning. The area structure plan would be, if council so chooses, would be as amended, approved as amended upon second reading. I think I wrote that in there like that.
So that would be for
008 would be as amended.
As amended, okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, John.
I was just gonna move the bylaw 23-008 be read a second time and as amended.
Thank you, John. John has moved the recommendation that bylaw 23-008 be read a second time as amended. Is there any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Klaus?
Then I would like to move that bylaw 23-009 be read a second time, and that is not as amended.
That's right. That's just as presented.
Okay, thank you. Klaus has moved the recommendation that bylaw 23-009 be read a second time. Is there any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Moving down. Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move that bylaw 23-008 be read a third time.
Thank you, Eric. Eric has moved that bylaw 23-008 be read a third time. Is there any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And moving down. Lauren?
I would move the third reading of bylaw 23-009.
Thank you, Lauren. Lauren has moved the recommendation that bylaw 23-009 be read a third time. Is there any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you very much, Hillary. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the city and everyone that put in the work on this. Thank you so much. We can move in our agenda packages. We are on item number 5 under subdivision applications. Apologize to those who had to wait there a little bit for us. Sorry we didn't get to this before the public hearing. But with that, we'll go to item 5, subdivision application 2023-0-038. And I will throw it back to you, Hillary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Council. So this is our last subdivision of today. This subdivision is for a realignment and reconfiguration of 2 titles, both located along the Old Man, or within proximity to the Old Man River, to the east of Diamond City. The applicant is requesting to reconfigure the titles by adjusting 2 titles from being 37.06 and 43.45 acres in size to 14 acres in size and 66.61 acres in size. Both would be for residential use. As you can see on the air photo with regards to this area, it is all these lots are located within the river valley, so just below a coulee, set of coulees. I will just pull up the map here showing what the proposal is so you can kind of better visualize it. So these lots, just for council's kind of consideration, are historical lots that were created back in the 1920s, about?
Some 1905, 1920.
1905 and 1920. So they're historical lots that the county has had to be somewhat inherited. Obviously, they weren't here. Nobody in this particular room created the majority of those lots at that time. Hey.
Jeez, you guys all jumped on that.
Man. And so this is just to look at a reconfiguration, and I will get this map up here eventually. Apology. So this is what the lots look like today with regards to how they are configured. So there is the title that's along the Old Man River right now, so Title 1, and then Title 2 is the title that takes up the coulee land on to the west and also encompasses the majority of that particular road. I will note that this road is not a county road. This is an access by easement only, and it has always historically been an access by easement for all of these parcels to the south. And the reason for that being an access by easement is that it is not up to the county standard in terms of a road, the road construction, road width, and some of the slopes on there are quite severe. So it has maintained to be an access by easement. So the applicant is requesting to reconfigure those 2 titles. As you can see in this proposed image, the yellow area would be consolidated to include a portion of the parcel to the east, and it would include that access easement, and then they would reduce the size of the other title so that it would be much smaller, 14 acres in size, and it would include the existing residence. So back to our Othra photo so you can kind of see the lay of the land. The intent of the application is to reconfigure these titles with the intent on being able to develop another yard in this area. The current configuration of those titles, there's no opportunity for development of another yard on those coulee lands. They're too close to the slopes, and as we've seen, we don't want properties too close to slopes, either up high or down below. And so this would provide that opportunity to the applicant to be able to develop another yard. And so with that is kind of the one consideration Steve Hardy and I would like to present to council, is that because this road is through access by easement only, we would be adding another residence onto a road that's access by easement only. So that's just something for council to consider in terms of the long-term goals and objectives of this area. Do we want more residences in the river valley here where we have no county road? But that's kind of a point for you to consider with regards to this particular subdivision. And if you need more information on the status of that road, Jeremy Wixon and Devin Teely can probably speak to it a little bit more clearly if there's any questions. So with that, sorry that was really long-winded for a subdivision introduction, but I will pass it off to Steve for the rest of the planning comments and the recommendation.
Hey, Mr. Chair. For this application in front of you, as you can see in the land there and what's going on, is I prepared those color maps for you to show, because I thought it would give you a better idea there with all the lines and stuff of what's existing and what's proposed with this application. As Hillary mentioned, this area down the river there is a historical area in the county. Lethbridge County itself has never approved any new standalone subdivisions from what existed there back in the early 1900s and 1920s. What you have done a couple times over the years is we've done some reconfiguration, so we've moved some boundaries around to make parcels different sizes and shapes and that sort of a thing. Largely, the reason, as Hillary mentioned here with the road, is that why the county hasn't approved new additional subdivisions is just due to the access down there and the road and some concerns with that. The road that's there, which one of the landowners, probably about 15 years ago or so maybe, beefed up a little from what it used to be, but that was the early trail down to the river ball and back from at the turn of the century that they got down there on. But just due to the layout and the steepness and that sort of stuff and the current standard, it's not built to a county road standard. So with this application, the applicant is proposing to do a land reconfiguration realignment here as well, so there won't be an another standalone subdivision title. They're starting with 2 and ending up with 2, but you can see from the maps and diagrams there, it's just different sizes and layouts with that. So with the application itself, the main purpose is to reduce in size the smaller 37.6 acre lot to 14 acres. So that would be the one that ends up down in the very bottom there, the green. And separate the dwelling on the south portion from the sheds and movable animal shelters on the north portion. So just to the north of the existing yard there in the green, the landowner has some improvements there and some sheds and some animal shelters that will will remain on the larger piece. So this involves subdividing 23.06 acres of land and then it'll be consolidated by plan with a separate title to the west. That's kind of the coulee land, comprised currently of 43.45 acres, thereby enlarging it to a title that would be 66.61 acres in size in the end. So there'll be no additional standalone title for that 23.06 acres subdivided. It will be consolidated to form the larger title. The existing west 43.45 acre title is largely the coulee land. It presently contains no improvements on there. It is pasture coulee land and contains the main portion of the existing private driveway, which is a private access by easement, as Hillary mentioned, that goes into the river bottom, and which also provides the access to the adjacent neighboring titles. So that's a historic easement that's been on there. So all the existing parcels take legal access from the private access road through the longstanding easement agreements, and none of that will change through this reconfiguration and land swap. That easements and the ones registered on there will carry over onto the new titles, and so none of the neighboring landowners will be affected by anything. They'll still enjoy that right to access through the legal easement. The reconfiguration will result in the opportunity for a building site on that larger parcel. There is a land area outside the flood hazard zone of the Hohlbein River there to the east, which there'd be a potential for an additional dwelling to be constructed in that area. The existing dwelling on the south, which will now be on the smaller 14-acre parcel, is serviced by a potable water co-op and has a private septic field system for sewage. That won't be affected by this boundary adjustment and will remain associated with the dwelling. In this area, it is an area flagged by the province as for potential historic resources of a category 5A and P, that's archaeological and paleontological. And on the smaller area of 4A, archaeological. So the application normally would require a historic resource approval. During the circulation, it was sent to the province to historic resources. When I had to send out the draft to you for your agenda, at that time we hadn't heard back from historic resources, but we have since heard back from them. And they've waived the requirement for Historical Resource Act approval, and they're not requiring it as a condition with this subdivision, largely due to the large parcel size and the reconfiguration going on and not a standalone title and that sort of thing. So anyways, that is not a required condition on any subdivision approval. As well, since I sent the package over to you, we've also heard back from ACO Pipelines, has since responded, but they don't require an easement or anything on the application. So with that, during the circulation and advertisement, there were no objections or concerns received from anybody. This is an application at face value technically does fall under your realignment, reconfiguration of titles, subdivision policies. With what they're doing and the reconfiguration by a plan, they're starting with 2 titles. They'll end up with 2 titles. Just obviously the parcel boundaries and the sizes of those 2 parcels will be different. But it aligns, meets the technicalities of that policy for what they're doing. As well, the parcel sizes they're creating also meet the bylaw. So reconfiguration, realignment titles is in a sense always a discretionary one because you're looking at what they're doing and the sizes and what's going on there to determine if it's suitable or not and a rational use of the land for what they're doing. So on that basis, with this being a subdivision proposal under the reconfiguration realignments, the resolution presented to you is for an approval on that basis. If you were to look at an approval, the conditions would be that the taxes are paid up to date, the development agreement entered into. The applicant would have to provide that final plan of survey, that this is all done by a surveyed plan, where we're going to create lots and block parcels for those. So there's no standalone titles or slivers of land left. As well, the existing access easement shall remain registered on title, and that shall not be discharged or removed to continue to provide the private road access, as Lethbridge County does not want to take over and have a road provided for the subdivision and remain as is the current situation. So on that basis, the recommendations in front of you. Alternatively, if you didn't see the merit in the reconfiguration, you could not approve the subdivision application. I think that's all I have for you at this point.
Thank you very much, Steve. Open up to council. Claus?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you explain a little bit of the access going, and I know you did touch on that, but to parcel, because you got parcel 1 and parcel 2 there. So how do you get to parcel 2? Because that's different ownership now.
So currently on all of the titles in this particular area, there is an easement that allows all of those titles to gain access to that essentially driveway approach. So the driveway approach actually starts at the county's road off of Township Road 101. And so let me see if I can highlight this. Nope. I'm gonna just mess things up. Here we go. So you can see this is where that that west title is, and so that driveway kind of goes along there, and then these titles going further to the south, they have easements on their title allowing them to essentially piggyback off of that driveway. And so that easements are always challenging, as I've mentioned in the past, just in terms of if something happens or somebody doesn't maintain the road, or if somebody has a disagreement with a landowner, it becomes a civil issue. It's not a county issue in terms of access to that easement. But that's how it works for this one, is that everybody down here all has an easement on their title that allows them to use this essential driveway to access their parcels.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So essentially, all of those parcels already go through the existing what is parcel number 1.
That's correct.
So in the reconfiguration, there would be really no change in that. All those properties that access that would still be going through parcel number 1.
That's correct, yeah. And so it would just be tied to this particular parcel now in a slightly different way. But yes, essentially it stays that way.
Lauren?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So could you show us that picture of the new proposed 1 and 2?
Yep.
So it kind of looks like they're the house in 2 right now. They have access to that road by easement,
That's correct.
but it's in their own property. So how do you transfer the easement from 2 to 1? If you know what I mean?
Yeah, Steve can probably explain that better than I can.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the way the easements work, it's currently registered across all those parcels for the benefit of each, for access egress. So with the subdivision, with the new plans registered, that won't be discharged. So what happens when it goes to land titles, it'll be carried over and it'll be automatically registered on the new reconfigured titles created. So it's just carried over onto the new legal descriptions or everything that. So it basically goes with the land. So if the title changes, a new description changes on there, the CAT number changes, it will just continue on that. So we won't discharge that. It'll be left alone, and once it gets registered light and because it was on the old underneath, it'll get automatically land titles carried over onto the new. And as well, when the titles come back, we always double check that too. Occasionally land titles make some mistake or something like that, but it doesn't happen very often. But if we see it, then we notify them and they ensure that it's put on the new titles or whatever like that. That rarely ever happens, but anyways, but it automatically, if it's not if no discharge papers go, it'll get carried over onto the new description. So the county won't have to worry about it.
Any other questions? Eric, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How many residences are using this road already?
We can do it by parcel too, because there is actually one parcel that doesn't have a residence, but current residents would be 6 residences. So this new configuration, if approved by council, would add a 7th residence onto that easement.
Okay, so not a drastic change.
Nope,
Thank you.
just an addition of 1.
Any other questions? Go ahead, John.
Not a question, but I'd like to move the subdivision application 2023-0-038 be approved subject to conditions as outlined in the draft resolution.
Thank you, John. John has moved the recommendation that subdivision application 2023-0-038 be approved subject to the conditions as outlined in the draft resolution. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried.
Okay,
Thank you,
thank
Hillary.
you.
Thank you, Steve. Larry, are we okay for F11, or where would you like to go?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just a brief update there. Our peace officer is in the building, and he is aware that he needs to show up to present this report, but he did have a Zoom call at 10 o'clock. He didn't expect it to be more than a half hour or 45 minutes, and we're about at that point. With your, council's permission, maybe you could just jump and anticipate that he'd show up in the next few minutes here. Thank you.
So with that, why don't we go to F2, Municipal Services, F2.1, Proclamation of National Public Works Week, May 21st to 27th, 2023. And with that, we have Jeremy Wixon. Jeremy?
Good morning, Council. Thank you. So today we have, and I'll give credit for this agenda item report was put together by Maddie on behalf of our communications coordinator, on behalf of for me. So just as a general summary, National Public Works Week is May 21st to 27th of 2023. This is held annually in municipalities across Canada and the United States to recognize the essential services provided by public works departments. Administration is requesting that Council proclaim this week in Lethbridge County to acknowledge our largest department and the importance of the services they carry out for our citizens and businesses. So previously, Council has never made a proclamation for National Public Works Week in the past. However, administration has recognized the week through social media posts and the newsletter articles over the last several years. Just some general background on this topic. Public works related activities and services make up a considerable portion of the county's annual operating budget. This includes both the Public Works Department, the Utilities Department, and essentially the Ag Service Board Department activities. Parks, playgrounds, numerous other pieces that are essentially part of this portion. Administration plans to post information on the services provided by the Public Works Department to our social media channels and has included an article in the May County Crier newsletter already. Some alternatives that could be looked at as far as this. Council cannot proclaim this as a National Public Works Week. Pros to this, no clearly identified benefit. Con, this could be a missed opportunity to join other municipalities across Canada in recognizing the work of public works staff. So my recommendation for today is that Council proclaim May 21st to 27th of 2023 as National Public Works Week in Lethbridge County.
Thank you, Jeremy. Open up to Council. Claus.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this all this entails is that we just have to recognize that it's going to be the Public Works from the 21st to 27th. There's nothing else involved.
No, correct.
Okay.
Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can we do these all in January for the year and have it ready so that way they can just come on through? Something for administration to consider. I think we know that every week has something, so that's acknowledge them at that point. For the rest, I will move the recommendation.
Thank you, Eric. Eric has moved the recommendation that Council proclaim May 21st to 27th, 2023 as National Public Works Week in Lethbridge County. Is there any discussion? Call a question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
You good, David? Why don't we go now back to F1, F1.1, Community Services, the January to March 2023 Community Peace Officer Report. And with that, we have our CPO, David Entz. David?
Good morning, everyone. This is the January to March 2023 Community Peace Officer Report. It basically provides a short a quick overview of the CPO program from the months of January to March of this year. Background information, I know you all know me, you're all familiar with what I do, so I don't think I have to go into all of that. But in the notable events, there were 41 case reports created. So normally those, when case reports got created, those are generally complaints that some citizens or public works calls me about, or sometimes when it depends what it is, I also create a case report if I observe something. So the highway protection bylaw has seen an increase, while the fire permit bylaw has seen a significant decrease, which is largely due to the new fire permitting system and the position of the fire service manager. I rarely get any fire complaints, because Byron generally would deal with those. If he needs me, he'll call me, or vice versa. The highway protection bylaw, those were mostly for snow pushed into the right-of-way. We had one ratepayer that I think he had like 3 or 4 different properties, and he didn't just push a little bit of snow, he pushed a lot of snow. So we made him to get it off the county right-of-way. And dog control is pretty much with the same, and those are dogs running at large, or dog bites, or dog barking, that kind of thing. Overweight trucks, they're always around there, will always be around. So some of them are 2,000 to 3,000 kilos overweight, some of them are repeat offenders. If I leave some of them too long, they revert back to their old habits. So it's just I constantly have to just check up on them. And then the road ban came on at the end of March, and one semi-driver chose to drive past 2 posted 75% road ban signs. So a unit like that, when he's fully loaded, all the combined tickets that he could get total up to around 16,000. I haven't gotten that far yet, where if I catch him again next year or this year, that's probably where it will go. But I think he understands that he needs to be more educated or on the ball when road ban season starts. And I thought this was an interesting one here, where I was out later into the, after hours, put it that way. And I saw a manure haul going on, and I just stopped, and I noticed the manure truck 2 miles from where I was sitting, and then he stops all of a sudden. And his co-worker's on the other side of the highway. And then everybody stops. I just stopped. So I waited for 5-10 minutes, nothing happens. And then I start driving towards the manure haul, knowing all well what was gonna happen. Sure enough, he turns around and books it back to the feedlot. So I had a discussion with them about that incident, I think a week after I saw them out there again. So I just stopped them and said, this doesn't look very good. So, I mean, you guys just, you know what your weights are, abide by it, and then there's no problem if I come around. I just thought that was kind of interesting. And then on the Ranch Road 23-4, that's the old Highway 23. I'm amazed at the speeds I got on that highway. Like you can see, one guy was doing 141, which he was actually telling me he was doing 160. But I guess by the time I locked him in, he had already hit his brakes. I actually thought he was gonna go airborne the way he was driving. And then another minivan doing 140 with kids in the van. I don't know, I can't figure that out, but anyhow. I can't do barely more than 80 on that road without jumping off almost. And then intersections constantly have to be watched. There's the one on Howe Road and Brown Road. I've seen a few of those where people just fly right through as the stop sign is not even there. There's a stop sign, there's rumble strips, it's well marked, and they go, well, we didn't see anything. You maybe shouldn't be driving. And then again, I was out, just happened to be out on Highway 25. They had it well posted. People were working many signs to warn people to slow down, and this individual was doing 95 in a well-posted 50. Didn't see the signs. I go, I don't know what else you're not seeing. So yeah, speeding, I'd say that has always been an issue, will always be an issue. But commercial vehicle, I do some inspections with they're no longer called commercial vehicle, they're all now called sheriffs. The commercial vehicle branch doesn't actually exist anymore. Sheriffs. They still do, so it depends. If you see a sheriff vehicle, he might just do traffic, but he also might do commercial vehicle inspections. So you would never know unless you knew the guy. And then I help out with with fire if I can hear them on the radio. If I know that, if I can sense they need some help, I'll ask and then I'll go help them out. One of the success, there was a burned out house out in the county, just adjacent to Colehurst, which got removed by when we engaged them through Northern Company, because otherwise they didn't get any traction. But once we got them involved, then we got a lot of traction. So that was good. Also currently working on another property in the county, which is a huge cleanup. It's been going on for over a year. And I'm actually happy to report that we have been granted a cleanup order by the courts. And I think that deadline is up in July. But the individual is actually texting me pictures of loads going out pretty much, 3 or 4 loads going out pretty much every week, which I'm actually quite surprised, but I'm actually happy that that's the result. So hopefully by the time July rolls around, most of it, or not all of it, will be completed. One of my challenges, park holiday trailers in Shaughnessy. I get complaints, residents want them removed. I go, well, if they're plated, if they have a plate on and the plate is registered to that trailer, they can sit there 24/7, 365. There's nothing I can do about it. If it's a vehicle, it's different. They have to be moved every 72 hours. I just dealt with one here 2 days ago. So I have mechanisms in place for that, but not for holiday trailers.
Okay. Time for a question, David?
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On that one there with the trailer, so you said if they're motorized, they can only be there 72 hours? And if it's just a trailer behind a vehicle, then you can leave them sitting there if they're plated?
Yeah, so if it's a trailer and it's on it, and it can be unattached, then it can sit there. As long as it's plated, plate belongs to that trailer, then there is nothing we can do about it. So that needs like a bylaw to be able to do that. Just like a lot of municipalities, like the city here, you can have your trailer on the street for, I believe, 48 or 72 hours, but it has to be attached to a vehicle, but you can never have it unattached.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you elaborate on that a little bit for the Shaughnessy situation? So the holiday trailers are parked on the street. Are they attached?
No.
They're not?
No.
Okay, so, and the way it is currently set up then, if it is not attached but sitting on the street, they could stay there for perpetuum as long as they're properly plated?
Correct.
Okay.
So during that time period, I wrote 45,332 in fines, and a lot of those are speeding tickets, and of course, overweight trucks, those fines are huge. Stop signs, speeding, overweights, and some of them from commercial vehicle inspections as well, everything combined. And approximately 50% of that comes back to the county. So, any questions?
Thank you, David. Any questions from council? Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So out in Stewart Siding, I noticed that the parking issue has kind of sort of resolved itself. Have you noticed any troubles there since they decided to park along the fence instead of parking on the road?
No, thanks for your question. No, that was a good initiative by the county to allow them to park off the road, and I haven't had any issues since then. So,
Any other questions for David? If not, thank you very much.
thank you.
Can move down on our agenda. F3, Corporate Services, F3.1, Bylaw 23-017, Tax Mill Rate. And we have Jennifer Place, our Director of Finance and Administration, and Les Whitfield, our Assessor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Les is just going to assist with the presentation of the rates. I'll just give you a quick summary. So the rates that were presented in this bylaw are based on a 2-to-1 ratio for the residential and non-residential. We do have, or Les has prepared some options, different ratio options for council's consideration as well, but in the prep of the bylaw, we kind of kept it the same as it has historically been. So the assessment roll has been prepared for the 2023 tax year. The 2023 municipal budget was presented and approved by council in December of 2022, stating that the tax support amount required was just over 16.6 million that needs to be collected. Within that, we collect on behalf of the Lethbridge Regional Waste Services Commission for their requisition, and of course Haul Route Capital Funds for a total of just over, or just shy of 18 million. As per the Municipal Government Act, a tax rate bylaw is required to be passed annually, which enables the property assessment and tax notices to be issued and levied to our ratepayers. The property tax due date is July 31st. I've just included some history here with regards to the portions of the Municipal Government Act it applies to. And just for some background information with regards to the history and what you'll see in the attachments, is that there was an increase in the residential assessment of just over 81 million from 2022. 24 million of that was growth or new development, and just shy of 57 million is attributed to market value adjustments. And Les can get into details if council has any questions. 57 million overall increase in non-residential and machinery and equipment assessments. And of that, 16.79 million in growth and just over 40 million in inflation. So as council's aware, within the Municipal Government Act, we have 4 classes that are identified, which is residential, non-residential, farmland, and then machinery and equipment. Again, below, the rates that have been presented in the bylaw are based on a 2-to-1 ratio between the non-residential and the residential tax rates. And the municipal tax rate for non-residential and machinery and equipment must be the same. That is legislated that way. The 2023 farmland tax rate is slightly higher compared to 2022 by 3.78%. And the 2023 residential tax rate decreased by 3.39 due to the increase in assessments and results in $162,985 in taxes over the past year. And the non-residential and machinery and equipment tax rates also decreased by 3.36, again due to assessment, resulting in a $230,000 increase over last year. So you can see here the financial impact is basically we have to collect what has been approved through the budget. We just have a bit of a breakdown here for council, and then a comparison of the 2022 rates against the 2023 based on the 2-to-1 ratio. So I'm not sure what council would like to look at first. We did include, if you scroll down after the bylaw in the package, oops, pardon me, I'll get to it. Les has the rates there, kind of spelled out by assessment code, I guess. And then we also have I'll just get down to it, a summary comparison. There we go. Oh, that's pretty small. So I'll just turn this over to Les, and he can speak to these spreadsheets, and then we can answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Jen. So this is the one that's included in the agenda package. Again, the highlights for the year for the assessment and stuff are the increases in the residential and non-residential assessment classes. Very minimal increase in farmland. We based it exactly on the 2-to-1, and these are the rates that we come up with. Now, when just for an example, using these rates, this is sort of the, give you a, this is what the impact looks like based on for just a few, I can't get the whole thing in there, but we're looking at for a residential hamlet parcel with a value of $220,000, an increase $68. Then your commercial properties, $300,000 property, roughly 122, 900, 255, 1.6 million, 490, and they're all within the 2 to 3% range. Basically, is what they're going to see for. That's an increase in the property tax bill, and that's because of the tax rates that are proposed and the increase in the property assessments. The farmland property, the irrigated quarter, we're looking at a $34.13 increase, and a dryland quarter, a $20 increase. Other examples, just 6 random examples. The taxes are range from $18 to $116 proposed increase. Now I can. What else we prepared this year is just another example of your tax rates. If you went to a 5-to-1 ratio, which just for curiosity's sakes, that you're allowed to go your maximum tax rate difference between the residential and non-residential at a 5-to-1, just some of the impacts of what the tax rates would look like. The increase you're looking at to go to a 5-to-1 non-residential, residential increase, you'd be looking at a decrease in the residential rate of 27.18%, increase in the non-residential 17, and then your M&E at 26%. So that would be the impact of looking towards that 5-to-1 residential, non-residential tax increase.
Thanks, Les. Go ahead, John.
Can you, when you're talking about the 5%, that's the regulated 5-to-1 ratio rate, but that's looking at it on a standpoint of reducing the residential down then?
Yes, the residential would have to be reduced.
What's our ratio
Because,
right now?
because we're still only, the problem is that we're still basing it on this collection amount of 16,750, so that's where.
And our ratio right now is 2-to-1?
Is 2-to-1 exactly, is how it's prepared and presented.
We do a 3-to-1 example as well.
Okay. And if we do, this is based on a 3-to-1 scenario. It's not, the impact, again, it's like 14% decrease in the residential rate and a 7% increase in the non-residential, 12% in machinery and equipment, compared with, we were looking at the 5-to-1, the 27% decrease and 17.6% increase. So those are just prepared for some, if you need any further direction. Yes?
Thanks,
Thank you. Those rates already reflect inflation increases on all the residential assessment, machinery and equipment assessments, all built into that already.
Yes.
So
yes,
above and beyond inflation is how we're when you did that example of what they were gonna pay extra, that was just year over year dollars from last year to this year.
Yes, included in inflation and
increase.
And any small change in, it's not just inflation, there's other small things that might come into effect on property, like certain areas might see an increase over and above just your regular inflation. An actual increase in market value, yeah, like almost like new assessments, so that's just all combined.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Les and Jen? Thanks for breaking out these spreadsheets, Les. I know that was something we discussed last year, so thank you for doing that. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I know we've hit this numerous times, but as far as I know, and as like full clarity, farmland is not to be touched at this time. It cannot be touched. It is done and done. Is that correct?
Okay, if I can just go back to that random example, maybe. So on the farmland, I got comparing the irrigated quarter to the dryland quarter. This assessed value of 31,560 and 53,250, that is the value that stays the same unless you change irrigation acres or anything like that. But I can't bring that value up at all, this 31 or that 53. That is, besides being a regulated rate, there's no indexing or nothing like that, no inflationary attributed to it. So what happens is the tax rate on the farmland tax rate, an increase to that, which is a different percentage too, because this never gets inflated, so it works out to 2% or 3% is a $20 or $30 increase on a farmland property tax bill.
So the clarity I'm seeking is that you cannot turn that number, that 2.24%, into a 7 or a 10%.
You can, yes, for sure. No, council has the discretion to do that. What that does, if you increase that, then because we're only collecting the 16,750,
Right.
we also bring that.
It'll
the
lower
rest of
the
it
other
down.
ones.
But
But-
no, okay, sorry, yeah.
Yeah?
No, yeah, but yeah, it is, yeah, no, we added because we added the 5%. Okay, yeah, back. So what happened when we came up with these rates at 3.78%, I roughly took the 4% property tax increase or budget increase and added that as a whole number to increase the amount of dollars collected from the farmland. And that was the result. But I mean, I didn't increase this number to come up with a figure. That was just my rationale for starting off.
Lauren, again, Klaus?
Okay, so can you explain, does the farmland have to fit in that 2-to-1, 5-to-1 compared to residential, non-residential?
No, but on the act, it says that 5-to-1 ratio only applies to residential properties and non-residential properties. But non-residential properties are defined as as your commercial industrial properties, not farmland. So farmland isn't considered non-residential for the purpose of the act.
So if you increase the mill rate on the farmland by, say, 5 points, you could get your tax up, but you have to reduce any other taxes if you do that?
We would, because of how we've passed the budget.
It's kind of a balancing act, so we can only collect what is approved within the budget. So if you raise one, you have to reduce the others, or you have to reduce somewhere else in order to balance that number.
Okay.
Go ahead, Klaus.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, but it's, farmland is provincially regulated. So you-
Assessment.
Assessment.
Yeah, the assessment, so you can't do anything on that. So how, so you had 2.24 that you did go up on that one. Are you just moving stuff around, or what, can you explain that?
Oh, okay, we're just moving the amount that's collected from the increase in the budget, I guess. Like that, because your farmland assessments, this 158 is what's the regulated. So this number here, that's the total of all the farmland assessments in the county. And so by increasing the amount of dollars and then divide it by the total amount of farmland assessment, that's where the,
So to get more out of that, the residential, the residents and stuff like that on the farmland would have to go up. Would that
If-
be right?
So in this middle column, right here, where Les is speaking, these are the tax rates, the municipal tax rates. So what Les has done is because the farmland assessment is, we'll call it flat, basically, he increased the tax rate by the difference roughly in what was increased in what we need to collect in tax support. So when that is increased, it kind of filters down. So now we're saying we're going to collect 158 million from the farms, dry land or irrigated, and then it reduced the next category and so on and so forth. So at the end of the day, we're only collecting what was approved within the budget to collect. That's what we have to follow. So anytime you increase or decrease one of the tax rates or the dollars that you're going to collect within that category, you have to adjust it somewhere else. Yeah.
Jen, on that, with that 22.08, where do we, as far as comparators, do we have any idea where we fall on that? My understanding was we were near the top. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we are, within the province, we are one of the higher farmland tax rates. I can't say here today if we're the highest, but I know we were in the bottom end, or top end, however you want to look at it.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just specifically dealing with the mill rates, and I think I understand this concept, but if we were to approve a budget that was twice this at $34 million, then these mill rates would all be adjusted in proportion to the assessed values then.
Right.
Okay. So I was under the impression, I'm thinking incorrectly now, that the farmland mill rate was capped at a certain amount over and above residential. That 5-to-1 ratio does not apply to farmland?
I had thought it did too, but in speaking with Les and doing some research, no, it's only the non-residential and residential. That's capped.
Okay, so and the only issue really then becomes the assessed value of the farmland in relationship to the assessed value of all of the other properties within the county is why we're limited in terms of the adjustments that we can do with taxes on farmland.
Yeah, they don't, and Les can correct me if I'm wrong here, but the current market is not reflected in the farmland assessment the same way it would be in a residential or commercial property.
Right, yes. Yeah.
Go ahead, Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you pull up that chart again for the actual dollars increase expected, please? Okay, so what I see in that is a homeowner with a property at 220,000 is paying double the increase of what $2 to $4 million quarter is getting. So, in my opinion, as it appears we do not have caps on this, I would like to see farmland go up by at least the minimum that a residential property is going to be paying. That would be my minimum I would like to seek. And yes, it will mess up a lot of things for your mill rate adjustments, but that's my opinion on the matter, is that I would like to see the dollar amount on the vacant quarter be a lot closer or at the basic residence, and in order to achieve that, I'm guessing we're going to see a mill rate hitting closer to 30%, 27, something like that. Could you speak to that, please?
Okay, if you just,
What sheet do you need?
how, yeah, what?
What sheet do you need? So
No,
you're,
I'm
what
just-
you're
I'm just want-
saying, Eric, is, or Councillor Van Essen, is that you want to see this percentage here on the farmland be closer to 4%, which would reduce this down. So you want, like, you're looking to see this increase higher than what the residential increase is?
I guess I'm looking at it that proportionately farmland is still not increasing at the rate that everything else is, because we're cannot factor into our assessment change. So in order to combat that, we have to hit a higher percentage to include assessment change. And it'll look somewhat skewed on the increase, but it's still gonna work out to be matching with inflation and other increases.
Essentially a higher mill rate farmland.
Essentially a higher mill rate, yes.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if you go down to your other chart and you change the farm mill rate, say to
Yes.
30,
Let's
will
yes.
that automatically change the others?
Yes,
So
it will
could you,
reduce them.
could you put that up and see what it does?
We could try, so it might take a little bit,
because,
because
yeah.
there's some, tinkering with the numbers
Oh, yeah, I
to
realize
balance.
that.
But, and you're, just so we're clear, if Les does have to go back and make some adjustments, the 2-to-1 on the residential and non-residential at this point is fair, fine. I guess council's satisfied with that for these purposes. So increasing this rate for farmland is sort of where, so if you made that.
If you made 3.7, 3.750, let's try that.
Jen, if you'd like, we could, move down and continue on with something if you want to lay this on the table for
Sure.
now and give you some time to work
Yeah,
on some
that might
numbers.
give Les a chance to run back
Okay.
to his desk and then we can present.
Is that agreeable?
So you're looking at just so he's clear when he goes back, non-residential and residential will leave at the 2-to-1, will increase the farmland rate upwards to ensure that increase paid between
difference.
the years is higher for farmland than residential.
Yes.
Okay,
Or at least equal to the
okay,
increase rate.
okay, equal to or higher then. So I'll close these so that you can work.
Okay.
Okay, then, in that case, too, whatever council decides, we would amend the bylaw to reflect based on that.
Okay.
Perfect. Do you want to go work on that and then we'll come back?
Yep.
Larry, do you need a motion to lay that on, do we need a motion to lay that on the table?
Probably be appropriate to lay it on the table, sure.
Go ahead, John.
Oh, goodness.
I make such motion to lay the current mill rate bylaw on the table.
Thank you, John. John has moved to lay the bylaw 23-017 tax mill rate bylaw on the table. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Jen, are you able to stick around, or do you want me to move into the
No,
correspondence?
I think Les can handle it.
Okay.
I don't see my report on here though, but that's fine. Oh, there it is, okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Les.
Okay, then we can move down, while Les works on that, we can move down to F 3.2, the quarterly financial report, January to March 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So before you have the January to March 2023 financial report. I don't have as many exciting little things to report as David did, but I'll try to get you through it. There's not a lot within the first quarter, as council's aware. The primary activities for the county take place in the spring and summer. That's when the heaviest, workloads are done outside in particular. I did include just on the first page, and I compared it to, I just left on here where December 31st was at and where the county is sitting today with regards to expenses, revenues, cash flows, etc. And noting that upon approval of the tax rate bylaw today, that taxes will be levied and issued towards the second last week of May, likely, is when that will happen. So if we just move to, I'm not sure what page it is in your agenda, just the first, I think it's page 720. This is just a quick summary. It just kind of shows a consolidation of the budget for the departments based on percentage, the portion that's been used and is still remaining. When you see it below the line, that just means that the current revenues collected in that particular area are higher than what the expenses are to date based on whatever it may be, grant funding. In the case of finance and administration, it's related to interest earned to date. For public operations in particular, most of their expenses to date was snow plowing, sanding. I think there was some ditch and drainage cleanup I saw in their activity report, and just beginning their prep for spring and summer and getting equipment ready, which is what ASB has also been busy doing in conjunction with their workshops and webinars that they've hosted. So we do expect to see in the next couple of quarters a significant increase in costs based on the activities. On the following page, this is just taking those percentages or showing you where those percentages came from. This is the budget actual against projected. And at this time, we don't see any, I'm not forecasting any reason why we should not be in line with budget, but it's awfully early in the year to do that. We did make adjustments at budget time, as council may remember, to reflect inflation and other cost increases that we have seen. In talking with Devin this morning, even, I won't say things have totally flatlined, but the trend is that maybe, I don't think they'll go down, but maybe we're starting to reach that flatlined point. On the next page, I just wanted to point out, this just kind of breaks it down even further, but our return on interest, which I will get to further in the report, has been good. We've seen increased interest rates, I think council is aware of. I've been working with the investment portfolio to ensure that we're getting the best rates we can and that they're constantly on that. And I did actually have CIBC Wood Gundy include some comments, which I put in the report as well, because I think that's just helpful for council to see. I'm not going to go through all of the detailed activities. It's a long report, I understand that. I don't know if council has any questions on what was presented in the activities. I know planning and development gave their first quarter report at the last meeting, and then the CPO just gave his, so I think that's pretty straightforward. I will, though, run down to, let's see what page it is on here, just for couple items I want to touch on. Provincial updates. Not a lot of changes with regards to grant funding with MSI and which is now the Canada Community Building Fund, formerly the FGTF, Federal Gas Tax Fund. Our allocations are pretty close to what they were previously. However, we did receive the Local Municipal Initiative grant funding for one of our projects in the amount of $1.83 million. So receiving that funding actually reduced our spending on the MSI. So we've gained some dollars within our MSI because that project was initially tagged to use MSI funds. So that's a win for the county, definitely, because that opens up some other dollars for us should something come up. So I want to point that out as well. After this report was written and approved, we learned that the Ag Services grant for the legislative and resource funding that they offer is going to receive about a $40,000 increase for 2023 and 2024. So it's good to see that some dollars are being handed out. I don't know timing has anything to do with it, but it's good news all around. And then this is just a quick summary of the projects that we have grants assigned to it and just where they're at, if the project's been approved, if we've received the funding as of yet, et cetera. That's on page 733 of your agenda. Then I did just want to move down again to just the comments from CIBC. Or the investment portion, and I'm sorry, I've lost my page now. When you look at page 734, I did want to point out we had this April maturity. So of course when I completed the report that hadn't happened yet. And it was at 1.82. Since that time, I've reinvested it at, I believe, 4.75%. So we're going to see some increase there. I took the interest earned, and that has also been included in the interest revenues to date, and just renewed the principal based on that, just to have some cash flow. And all of those interest earned on investments goes back to the capital reserves. So the more we can retain or accept as they come due, the more we can invest back to our capital reserves. And on average, you know, it just depends on timing and when GICs turn over and those kinds of things. We're averaging about 4% right now or better. So I think we're doing fairly well with our investments considering where they were a few years ago. And then again, just a quick little economic and portfolio update from CIBC Wood Gundy, and that I just more or less included for council's benefit. I wasn't sure if there was any concern with some of what had gone on down in the States with the banks, but in speaking with all of our investors, Canada's much more protected from those situations than the US is. So we don't have to worry about our investments, and they are all principal protected anyways. So that's kind of a quick brief of the financial update. As mentioned, if there were any questions with regards to the numbers or the activities that took place in this first quarter, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Jen. Go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question on your graph, the financial summary. How come finance administration is below, like down to minus 20%? And
Sorry, Councillor Hickey, I think you might have been out of the room when I was explaining that. So when it's below, it just means that the revenues are higher than the expenses at this time, and that is due to the interest, the investment interest that we've earned. So right now, that investment interest amount is higher than the overall activities in that department.
okay, thank you, and sorry for
Nope, that's
asking.
okay.
I had one other question though.
Yeah.
The TD Bank, the way things are going there, does that have any influence on any of the other banks so far? Have you seen anything coming across?
Not that I've heard, and I do reach out to all of them every time we hear something, and I'm sure they're sick of me. They're always assuring me that we're fine. So at this time, I could say that we, as the county, should not be impacted by that.
Way to go, James. Be on it.
Any other questions for Jen? If not, thank you very much for your report, Jen. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
We can move down. G, correspondence. We have 3 items of correspondence. Our first one, the Lethbridge Coldell 4-H Beef Club. The Lethbridge Coldell 4-H Beef Club would like to invite you and your administration to our 100th anniversary gala being held Saturday, June 10th, 2023, at the new Agri-Food Hub in Lethbridge. There's some details there. Where tickets can be purchased. Tickets are $75 each, or a table of 8 for $550. Some information on the club there. The members and alumni are looking forward to celebrating this milestone. The club is one of the few consecutively running clubs in existence. Their long-standing relationship with the exhibition is also unique not only to Alberta but also Canada. We look forward to celebrating with the community that has supported the club for the past 100 years. My understanding is that some things might have changed as regarding where the event takes place, just because of the timing around the completion of the new Agri-Food Hub. But the date is still scheduled for the 10th. It may, however, not be in the new Agri-Food Hub. Is there anything you wanted to add on that, Mark?
No, I think it was just, the request was just to see the county to purchase a table, so I know the club has been based in the county. Started in the county and has that history, so that was the request. It didn't come through in the letter, but I know the town of Coaldale has purchased a table, and that was what I think that was missed in that letter. So if there wanted to be discussion, I would probably step out of the room because I'm involved with the committee. So
thank you. Would you like to deal with these? You want? Yeah. So I guess we'll deal with this one then. Is there an appetite to purchase a table for 8 for $550? Go ahead, Lauren.
Well, I think that the county should be supportive of the 4-H clubs. That's the key to getting young people involved in agriculture, and I would fully support the county buying a table.
Thank you, Lauren. I need to offer a correction too. As things are still in flux, there isn't any decisions being made to this point in time yet as towards the venue. So what we have in front of us is still accurate as of today. Acknowledging that that could change, but this is still accurate. My apologies. Go ahead, John.
Thank you. Just looking at a table for 8, if this was something that council, if we left it open for council and staff and or spouses, 8 wouldn't be sufficient.
It's at council's discretion how you'd like to handle it. Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If the appetite is to pursue it, I think one table will be adequate. I do feel we gotta support these clubs, these committees, these things. Celebrating with them is a form of support more than financial support. So I need to try to recognize that it's not always just a financial, but it's also the showing up and participating. But unless we have a strong call for more than 8 here, I just support one table.
Thanks, Eric. Any other discussion? Would you like to make that a motion, Lauren?
Sure, I will. I would move that the Lethbridge County would purchase a table of 8 for the upcoming 4-H, Lethbridge Coaldale 4-H Beef Club's gala being held on Saturday, June the 10th.
Thank
I
you,
won't
Lauren.
Put a name in.
So Lauren has moved that Lethbridge County purchase a table of 8 for the Lethbridge Coaldale 4-H Beef Club's 100th anniversary gala being held Saturday, June 10th, 2023. Any further discussion? I will call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Moving down, we received our second.
Excuse me.
Oh, sorry, Larry.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, just wondering, we'll have to, at some point, if not right now, I don't know if there's an indication from council members who might like to attend.
Okay.
But Candace, maybe we'll need to know. I'm not sure if they need names. I don't think so, just the fact that we purchased a table. But one way or the other, maybe would be helpful just to even set a deadline, whereby council lets Candace know if they are able and willing to attend and how many seats they need and so on.
Okay. Go ahead, John.
If I could just add to that, I think, we need to ensure that that table is completely full, so those that put their name in to attend absolutely do attend, rather than have empty seats.
Right. I'll just speak for myself. I am unfortunately away at a wedding that weekend, so I've purchased a table personally that I will be donating to someone else to use because I can't read my calendar. But I will not be in attendance. So, sorry, did I interrupt, Klaus?
Well, I was just going to say, maybe we should have a show of hands here. Who's that? Maybe we can start out with that because it's not that far away.
Is anyone from council willing to attend and sit at the county table?
Yeah.
Okay, Lauren.
Yeah, I would. I'm just wondering. I think some administration would work well.
Okay.
Yeah. So if we have we have 1, 2, 3, 4 here by the looks of it, and we'll add administration to that then, if there's 4 willing to go to.
Do you have a table that isn't committed?
Well, I have been in communication with the 4-H group that it does not currently have seats or bums to fill those seats, and they could use it at their discretion.
Okay, I would be interested in probably purchasing a ticket for my wife now. Because, I mean, if we're gonna do, and I think it's totally fine and fair that we have those 8 filled with council,
Yeah.
but I think with some, I'd like to take my wife along. So if you're willing to have those discussions, and maybe if there's other spouses, we can work that out at a later time.
Okay. As far as, do you, like you said, Candace, maybe a date, or do you want names now, or?
It's totally up to you. I just need to know whose calendar I'm adding this to, but I can add it to all 7 of you for now, and we can go from there.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Candace.
Yep.
Okay, our second item, invitation to bid on the 2026 Alberta Winter and Summer Games. We received a letter from the Office of the Minister of Alberta Culture, just indicating that they are looking for submissions to submit a bid to host either the 2026 Alberta Winter Games or the 2026 Alberta Summer Games. It's included in your packages. I don't believe this is something that we have participated in the past, but it is here for your informational purposes.
We've just sponsored it.
We have sponsored, yes, when those requests have come forward. John?
I was going to say, I don't think that we have the infrastructure facilities to entertain this situation at all.
I would agree. I think it's just a blanket invitation. So we can move down then. Item 3, Farming for Tomorrow, Lethbridge Exhibition and Agri-Food Hub Trade Center commemorative publication. And you can read from that. We at Farming for Tomorrow are proud to produce a once-in-a-lifetime commemorative publication to recognize not only the past 125 years of success from Lethbridge Exhibition and Trade, but usher in a new era of development for the Lethbridge community. We'd like to extend an invitation to join us in a shared celebration of this incredible anniversary and grand opening and cement yourself in local history. And then there's several different options to advertise. And yeah, I would turn it over to council. If you have any interest or how you'd like to proceed. Clause.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that we should participate in this, and I don't know what kind of a size page we want, but I think it would be really helpful if the county would have a page in there that shows the ad of that, because I think something like this, we are the ag thing that's all around here, and we're even getting recognized there in of the money that we put towards the center. So I do think that would be good to have something in there, but I don't know what amount.
Thanks, Klaus. Eric and then Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I read this right, this is the magazine Farming for Tomorrow. We get it in with your mail and a variety of other things. This is not directly Exhibition Park or anything directly, so I will not be supporting it. They probably do great work. For one, it's quite expensive, I feel, and for two, what is it for the county? We're supporting the exhibition. I know that we do that regularly, so I will not be supporting it.
Thanks, Eric. Lauren?
I think Erica thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Erica sort of touched on what I was going to ask. Is this a magazine that the exhibition publishes, or is somebody else publishing it on their behalf, or do you know the details?
Go ahead, Mark.
I agree. I'm not sure, so I'd like to get more information on what this group is. I know that if they're using the exhibition logo, they're tied, but I'm not aware of this. So if we could, I don't think they need an answer right away, but do they? Deadline June 26th, so.
Okay. Larry, I'd throw to you. Is there any?
No, Mr. Chairman, thanks. I'm not sure if our executive assistant maybe had some additional information to share, and if not, to Councillor Sayer's suggestion, there is time yet, and we could do a little deeper digging and just give maybe even a short verbal report in addition and include this on perhaps the next agenda or certainly well before June 26th deadline if council would like.
Candace?
It's a separate magazine publication. They're just simply doing a commemorative publication on the exhibition. But they're from Calgary. It's not.
Okay.
They're a magazine entity.
Okay. At hands.
Yeah, well, just with the comments I made, I was assuming, and maybe you shouldn't always assume, but I mean, I was assuming that it went out from the exhibition, and that's why I thought of the supporting it would be important.
Thanks, Candace. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would echo Councillor Van Essen's comments on that, in that, this is not something that is really, directly financially supporting the exhibition grounds. It's more supporting a for-profit company to do a publication.
Thanks, John. So we could either send it back or just move on. If we want further information, move on it is. Jen, are you?
Let's just be a few more minutes. I'm not sure if you still had one more.
We have a closed site. Yes, we do.
If you wanted to do that, I can let them know in a few more minutes.
Absolutely. Okay, why don't we just recess, we'll recess the meeting for 5 minutes and then we'll. Yeah, I think, I'm sensing we need a recess. McInnes. Okay, thank you. We'll call the meeting back to order at 11:53 a.m. this morning, and we'll move back in our agendas to item F3, Corporate Services, F3.1, Bylaw 23-017, Tax Mill Rate. We have a motion to pick that up off the table. Eric? Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Les.
Mr. Chairman. So Les has done updated these spreadsheets for you. So what he did was he increased the farmland rate and then, of course, the impact to the residential, non-res, and machinery and equipment. On this comparison sheet, the ones highlighted in yellow are the updated amounts. Whoops, it's not going to do it very nice. So what you can see is this was the one amount that was presented before. So when you double it, it brings it up to 4.43% increase on average. And then you can see how it brings down these other categories. So the residential and non-residential parcels and their percentages. And that again is just how the balancing works out when you're looking to collect those funds. So we would be collecting more from the farmland based on this by about 4.43%. So I'll bring up those rates again if that's what council wants to see. So compared to previous year, this was 2022's, and this is 2023 now with those adjustments. Do we need that bigger?
Okay, and can we just go?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good. So when we're looking at that, we're talking then, in terms of the difference that's the difference between 2022 and 2023.
Mm-hmm.
So the residential would be going up in the range of $68 and $59, or sorry, $59, right?
Based on this
Yes.
new proposed, yeah.
No, the residential on the top. And then the typical irrigated quarter would be going up approximately $67.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
These are, of course, estimates based on the average, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
these are, there's
Just to
gonna
give you
be
an
some,
idea.
some subtle differences up or
Yeah.
down, but this is on an average basis.
And this is strictly the municipal rate, so any requisition rates are
Are
on
over
top
and
of
above.
this, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Eric?
Thank you. Thank you for pumping that out at a high rate of speed. That's essentially what I was looking for. Irrigated quarter, $67 increase versus $34 increase, but the percentage, 4.43, that is now taking into account a lot better our inflationary values that the other ones don't have. Nobody's getting a decrease, everyone's still getting their increases, and essentially that's what I like to see as a more fair way of looking at it.
Any other questions or discussion for Jen or Les? John?
I have my hand up for questions.
Oh, go right ahead.
I'd like to move that the 2023 tax mill rate bylaw 23-017 be read a first time as amended.
Any further discussion? Sorry, go ahead, Klaus.
Yeah, coming back to there, I think it's too drastic that we put up the farmland. I think we should do it a couple of steps at a time and not go all the way right away. I think it's too much, and I think we're gonna have some serious questions of what we're trying to do here without any explanation whatsoever.
Go ahead, Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One question first. If this does not get passed today, what are the implications of that?
Well, we can't issue a tax notice.
Okay.
I mean, it can be delayed, but it will delay that. If we delay passing the bylaw today, it will delay when the tax notices can get out. And with the July 31st due date, council would have to look at that as well if it was delayed.
Okay. Secondly, to Councillor Vanderveen, how many times can we split $30 to make it a gentle increase? we're talking about a $30 increase on a $3 to $4 million property with revenues that are very healthy. This is addressing inflationary values. Else, farmland is getting a 2% increase. Everyone else was getting more than that, quite a bit more than that. It's, to call it fair, we can hardly even call it fair yet, and that's my personal view on it. It's just a drop in the bucket to head in the direction to address inflation. So, yes, I will be supporting this.
Thanks, Eric. John?
Yeah, I would just reiterate what Councillor Van Essen had said. You know, we're, in terms of this being a drastic increase, this is not a drastic increase. This is an increase of $33 and change per quarter, which, you know, to put in real world terms is about a half a steak dinner at the Keg per quarter. You know, it's a very, very insignificant amount of money that we're talking about here.
Thank you, John. Any other? Sorry, go ahead, John or Jen.
Mr. Chairman, I was just going to add that we do include an insert with our tax notices where we provide information on, you know, the budget and the increases. So we could always add some information in there at council's discretion if you'd like, or if the REIT would like to have a comment to include with that information, we can do that as well.
Any other discussion? Yeah, go ahead, Klaus.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I cannot support this, and if you'd meet me halfway, that you go halfway up, I would be able to support that, but I cannot support this. This is, I think it's too drastic.
Go ahead, Morris. Yeah.
Yeah, my comments are, you know, it is an increase, and of course, you know, it doesn't matter where the increase is, but all ratepayers always notice the increase, maybe, or whatever down there. But if you look at the inflation we're working with and all the additional costs because of that, I think the majority of the ratepayers is going to realize down there, hey, there's probably good need for it, and that's my comment.
Thanks, Morris. So we do have a motion has been made that John has motioned that the 2023 tax mill rate bylaw 23-017 be read a first time as amended. Is there any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. Eric?
I'd like to move that the 2023 tax mill rate bylaw 23-017 be read a second time.
Thank you, Eric. Eric has moved the recommendation that the 2023 tax mill rate bylaw 23-017 be read a second time. Is there any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. John?
I'd like to move that council proceed to consideration of third reading of bylaw 23-017.
Thank you, John. John has moved the recommendation that council proceeds to consideration of third reading of bylaw 23-017. And for us to move forward today, this does have to be unanimous. Any discussion? I'll call the question. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we heard, if it doesn't pass right now, it will hold things back. The financial implication of holding things back on collections and all that is more than likely greater than what we're standing to adjust here. This, in essence, is a symbol. This, in essence, in my opinion, is a symbol that we recognize the disparity in collection and that the change percentage-wise for farmland, it's becoming irrelevant, the tax on it. So this is, in my opinion, is a symbol that we recognize it and we're going forward with it. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. John?
Thank you. My other comment would be that consideration of third reading is not acceptance of the bylaw in the sense that that if you're not in favor of it, you can still vote opposed to it with the third reading. So just what we're voting on right now is just the consideration of the third reading as opposed to whether or not you're voting on the validity of the bylaw.
John, any further discussion? So there has been a motion made that council proceed to consideration of third reading of bylaw 23-017. Call a question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That is defeated. So that is all for today then. If we move down in our agenda, we just have one closed session item remaining. That is J1, Economic Development Opportunity, FOIP Section 16, disclosure harmful to business interests of a third party.
Eric? Like a little bit of discussion. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could I address the finance department on what this means going forward and what we can look at?
Well, we'll have to bring it forward at the next council meeting, and it will have to be passed then, or I think council may have to consider extending the due date, because we have to give fair notice to ratepayers. I'd have to look up in the Municipal Government Act exactly how much notice they need, but historically we've given at least 6 weeks, or pardon me, 2.5 months, I guess, is what we've normally given. But we can bring forward it, I guess, from an administrative standpoint, what would you like brought back? Because I'm not really sure what to prepare for the next bylaw.
Well, I think we have consensus of a majority, so I think we can just bring back the bylaw and for third reading. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Can I get a motion to?
Oh, yes.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, that is an option.
Yeah, we call them. Yeah. Could I get a motion to enter a closed session? John? John has moved to enter a closed session at 12:05. Any discussion? Call a question. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And with that, I will turn it over to Janice? Good. Thank you very much, everyone. I believe that brings us to the end of our agenda. Thank you very much. Morris? Morris has moved to adjourn at 12:30. Thank you very much.